Miami football, perception, reality, what to expect for 2019. Next on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right, we're talking Canes. We got Dwayne Holloway on the line. You can catch him at the Wholesome One. It's HOLSUM, the number one, Wholesome One, the Wholesome One, here on YouTube with his unique take on Miami football. Wholesome One, how you doing today?
I'm blessed to see another day, Mark. Yet again, thank you for having me on Mark Rogers TV.
That is an apt response. We all certainly are blessed to see another day, and most of us a pretty good day. So thank you so much for stopping by. It's always a good take from you. When I look at this Miami program, it certainly is a unique place in college football history overall. I know Cam Underwood likes to describe it as the microwave dynasty. Took decades and decades for the Notre Dames, Michigans, Ohio States, and Alabamas to build the great traditions. Howard Schnellenberger and company, not that there wasn't Miami football success before that, but on a national stage, winning a national championship in 1983, and then the 10-year run approximately through 1994, a few down years because of NCAA violations, and then again another nice run with that ending in the 02-03 range. And now, certainly when Mark Richt took over, most people thought, although there were some detractors that didn't necessarily think he would bring the program back to the elite status of college football, he had a long run of success at Georgia. It looked like that would be the case after winning a bowl game for the first time in forever, 10 or 11 years in 2016, following that up with a 10-win season and division championship. And then it comes off the rails last season, and now a completely different direction with an up-and-coming bright young coach in Manny Diaz. Where does this program stand in regards to national perception?
And that's the biggest thing that we have to start focusing on is the national perception of the University of Miami. It's not the southern region. It's not just South Florida. It's, do people in Wyoming respect the U? Do people in Texas with their big football recruiting and California and things like that, and Georgia, does this U carry weight? That's something I speak about a lot on my channel. And in recent history, it does not. I mean, if you think about class of 2020, Don Channing Jr., our number one recruit, he wasn't even born the last time we won a national championship. So the perception of the Andre Johnsons, the Edgerrin James, those old guys, the guys that we could point to in the NFL saying that this factory was putting these guys into the NFL, they're not making any noise in the NFL right now, the guys that we are putting in. So we have to change. Moving into the 2020s, we have to start winning those big-time games. And I talk about it on my channel. I will be uploading a video on Miami's most recent biggest W's and toughest losses in the last 10 years from 09 through 19. And, it took a while to see a couple of those big W's. Especially if you take away Notre Dame in 2017, that was monumental for the program in a national landscape as far as people respecting the University of Miami's football program again. That's 2 seasons ago. We have to start winning the Coastal, first of all, handling the small things, because people don't respect the ACC Coastal. It's the worst division in college football, and we have struggled to even win that one of 16 opportunities and only won it one time. So we have to start changing the perception. So where people this U carries weight to the recruits. Getting a Miami offer should feel the same way as it does getting an Alabama, getting a Notre Dame, getting a Clemson offer. In the eyes of us Miami Hurricanes fans, but nationally and through the recruiting base, it is not viewed the same way. To the point where some people put us in the same category as your West Virginias, your Houstons, and your little, your middle of the road pack schools. And the University of Miami should not be perceived in that way. It should be perceived as a top 15, at worst top 20 program in and out, every season in and out. And we have to start winning those games to where people respect, care, and fear the University of Miami again.
We're joined by the Wholesome One. You can join him on his YouTube channel, the Wholesome One, HOLSUM. I encourage you to do so. He always brings it right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. please join me and lock it in right here. Of course, comment, like, share the videos, and subscribe to get yourself set for 2019 across the board. We're talking Miami football. And I think you bring up a good point about the perception of the Miami fan versus what has transpired over the last 15 years. Because I talk to Miami fans just as you do each and every day. And you're a guy that kind of merges the two in regards to trying to cover the program and the football team from an objective standpoint, but also being a rooting, raving fan. I cover it from a neutral standpoint. I talk to the fans each and every day. They bring comments to my channel, over 36,000 total for the year. So I hear a lot. And anytime anyone from the Coastal Division is brought up as being any kind of competition, they're just completely disregarded. Before this program can take aim at Clemson inside the conference and the likes of Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, or whomever you would like to roll out there on a national scale, this program needs to take care of business in its division and clean up what most people consider to be marginal programs like North Carolina and Pitt and Virginia Tech and Duke and Georgia Tech. And I named all the teams. And when I started with North Carolina, it seems a bit ridiculous because they've been a one-win team in the conference the last 2 years. But those are the teams that have won division titles. Now, Miami snuck one in, of course, in 2017. But those are the teams that have won divisions over the last 5 or 6 years. It has not been a situation where you would expect, based on recruiting footprint and that huge advantage that Miami has over teams from other areas in the South, that they would win. I would guess, and just looking at the advantage that Miami has in recruiting and the status of the program, that program should win that division 60% of the time. But no, they've won it once since they entered the league, and all those other teams have won it at least once, if not multiple times. And therefore, that can't be disregarded on the ascension. That has to be taken care of first. Win the division, own the division, take a dominant stand in the Coastal Division.
Absolutely, Mark. You hit it right on the head. The biggest thing for me going into 2019, a lot of people want to talk about week 0, Florida, Miami, 8 p.m. at Camping World Stadium. But honestly, that's a national viewpoint, and you want to bring a team out that's going to be competitive, and even on a great day, maybe even get that win against a good to great Florida Gators team coming off of 2018. But the biggest thing, really, to me, starts week 2, September 7th at North Carolina. It's Mark Brown's first game back in North Carolina. Their school's #1 coach, the best coach they've had. Coming back to the school, and 9 times out of 10 it's an 8 p.m. kickoff. So they're going to come off in the all black like they did back in 2013 when we walked into Chapel Hill. We were the number 7 team in the country, and they had already had 2 or 3 losses up until that point, and they played us very tough. The thing is, they don't respect us, Mark. That's the biggest thing. That's what you have to change, is the mindset and the perception of when we run out of the tunnel, when we run out of smoke, when we throw up this that you have already lost the football game before we even strap up. Before they blow the whistle, you have lost the game to the University of Miami. That's what made us great, was the psychological advantage we had over teams, that they were scared to even put on their pants and go out there and play the football game. You have Duke beating us at home last year and dancing on our logo in the middle of the field. Why? Because they don't respect us. They do not respect us. Our coastal rivals do not fear the U when we go out. We have to change that. How do you change that? Year in and year out, embarrassing. Year in and year out, winning, whether it's at Hard Rock Stadium or whether it's in Chapel Hill, whether it's in Durham, whether it's in Virginia Tech, when we go at Virginia. Like I said, when you think of these teams nationally, there's no way in the world, if I'm from California, I should look at the schedule and see Miami, a team. When you think Miami, a lot of talent down there, that should be a blowout. There's no way in the world they should be in a dogfight with the Duke. No way in the world they should be in a dogfight with Virginia. And no disrespect to the DMV, but South Florida, DMV, it might be compatible, but you have the number one recruiting class versus a top 15 recruiting area. So we should be winning these games. And just like Clemson, and I'm not comparing us to Clemson as far as the program, but if you could look at the trajectory and how we could get on that level, it was somewhat similar, the hiring process. Not really, because Dabo was a wide receivers coach and never had even been a coordinator, never had even been a head coach, but it's the way that the kids gravitated, the relationship that the kids had, these student athletes have to the head coach, and going out there and running through a wall for their head coach. And that's the same thing I get the energy and the feel when it comes to Manny Diaz. Successful coaches at the University of Miami have been players coaches, defensive players coaches. And that is what Manny Diaz is, to where these kids will go out, and it wasn't about just the logo on the helmet. It wasn't about the name on the chest or the last name on the back. It was going out and playing for our family, going out and playing for the people in the stands, and going out and running through the smoke with your head coach and knowing you don't want to let this man down. You don't want to let your fans and family who are in Hard Rock Stadium down. If we can get back to that and dominating these lower tier ACC teams consistently, that's a W. That's how you change the perception of the University of Miami moving into the 2020s, to where we can finally be back in the conversation of the U again.
We've got the Wholesome One on the line. Dwayne Holloway, you can join him on his YouTube channel, The Wholesome One, HOLSUM. And he will provide a consistent stream of Miami content, his unique analysis and perception on the program, and it's always good stuff. He knows his football, and he knows specifically his Miami football. We're always glad to be joined by the Wholesome One here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We invite you to join our Voice of College Football community over on Patreon, the Voice of College Football community there. 2 exclusive live streams each and every week. One, I respond to your viewer comments. The other one, I bring the viewers on. You, the community, I bring you on as guests, and we have a roundtable discussion on college football. We had our first Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, Wholesome One. So until there's actually games played at the end of August, and then especially those ACC or division games that you allude to, starting with North Carolina on the road in Chapel Hill, are we going to know whether all the bravado has some backing to it on the field? But based on what you're seeing near the end of your last answer to my question, you talked about what you've seen from former regimes, former head coaches that have been successful at the U. Do you see that out of Manny Diaz? Are you encouraged? Obviously, again, it's gonna play itself out on the field in terms of confirmation. But right now, do you like what you see?
I like what I see, and yet again, there comes this level of excitement every time that a new coach is hired or a defensive coordinator. You know, you get your key terms like, oh, they're flying to the ball, and everyone's moving fast, and wide receivers are breaking on routes, and they're building chemistry. All these key phrases that happens when you get new coordinators and new coaches. But the biggest thing that I want people to think about moving forward is not listening to the coaches. When you listen to player interviews and you hear certain things as if it feels different. It was a nice transition. We're moving faster. A lot of our players are winning competition, and we're building competition. Do our players look extremely happy to be out in front and getting these interviews? Do they, when you ask questions about a coordinator or a coach or a position coach, do you see the look on their face, that excitement that comes out when you bring up the name Manny Diaz? You bring up the name Dan Enos and Blake Baker, to see how our players, this happiness that pours out of them because they see and feel the program is different. When Mark Richt came and you watch the interviews, it's more of a business approach because he comes from the SEC. He had his success, and a lot of people might not view Mark Richt as respect, give him a lot of respect, but I definitely do, especially for what he did for our program and what he had did at Georgia in his previous regime. But it was more of a serious CEO effect to the program, kind of tightening up some loose ends, um, building a foundation that now Manny Diaz can project off of, as far as adding that energy, the fiery, the happiness, wanting to go out there and be excited about competing for the University of Miami. And our players are just exuding that. So that's why I say it feels different. You go back and you listen to Coach Randy Shannon when he was there. It kind of has that same feel. Now, Randy Shannon could never really keep an offensive coordinator. The budget wasn't as good for him as far as being able to hire a big name offensive coordinator. And when he did with Coach Whipple, who went on to the Jacksonville Jaguars 2 years later, and he still is in the NFL, you see how he was able to match Randy Shannon's defense with a top 15 offense. He had our first 9-4 season in about 5 or 6 years in 2009. Now we come back 10 years later. We're bringing back with Blake Baker, someone who's a Manny Diaz disciple, was with him at La Tech, was with him at Mississippi State, was a GA under him at Texas. So there's a connection there. It won't be the same because Blake Baker is more of a pass defense coach. So we get to make what we did good in 2018 even better because we're so young in that back half and we're more mature in the front seven of the defense. So you get to add that electric defense, now bringing in Dan Enos, who's tying up the loose ends and adding a jolt to the offense. So you bring all that together, and it's a lot of talk. We're going to prove it this season. All of the answers won't be at the end of the Florida game, whether that's a W or a loss. We'll have to see it all the way through a 14-game season. And yes, I'm adding ACC championship in there, and yes, I'm also adding a bowl game. So we'll see through a 14-game season how this University of Miami team is moving forward. But like I said, the biggest thing, Mark, is changing the energy and the perception of the U nationally to these recruits moving into the 2020s because we get further and further away from 2001. 2021 is 2 years from now, and that'll be 20 years ago. We don't want it to be 30 years, 25 years before the University of Miami is nationally respected again.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please lock it in right here. If you're joining me possibly for the first time or have just selected a few videos, please dive into the library. You see us covering college football like nobody else each and every day. Best discussion, debate, and analysis provided by a number of bloggers, broadcasters, and writers. And then, of course, analysis from myself. And I am also including, of course, our guest today, the Wholesome One, Dwayne Holloway. Please join him on his YouTube channel, The Wholesome One, HOLSUM, the number one. Please go there for Miami football coverage. So, you're talking about perception nationally and as it pertains directly to the recruiting base. So, it's a long way to December to see if the commitments are going to hold. And then for a lot of these guys, they'll wait until February, but about 80%, as we've seen the last 2 years, will sign in the early signing period mid-December. Do you like what you see so far in regards to recruiting? Miami stands about 10th in the country, right around that number, 8th to 10th in the country, according to the major services.
I do enjoy it, and it's a great thing to see recruiting because it's an ever-changing thing. A kid could get a Georgia offer. A kid could get that Florida offer that they grew up rooting for that team, and they're now committed to the University of Miami. So it's our job to keep that kid. It's our job to remind them of why they committed to the U. A lot of this, it's a continuous thing every year, Mark. We get 2 years away from now, we have a top 5 recruiting class. The closer we get to that signing day, we kind of fall back down the ladder. In order to hold these guys in, because then Nick Saban comes with the Alabama offer. Dabo Swinney comes with the Clemson offer. Ohio State offers, they kind of pull a couple of our South Florida guys every now and again. And so we have to get the W's and we have to win to keep these guys. Keep them committed to the University of Miami. Of course, we talked about Don Chaney Jr. last time I was here. A program-changing back is somebody who he's cinched into the U. But a guy like Willie Moose, or guys like Jalen Francois or Jonathan Dennis, these guys who they're high 4 stars right now, but they just got that 4th star. Or Marcus Fleming from Miami North, from South Ridge, wide receiver. These guys are just getting that 4-star, so now they're getting the other offers. They're starting to branch out a little further, and now they're getting a notification from these other big time, your Oregons, your Nebraskas, your Texases are starting to try to creep into South Florida. So we have to back up this early recruiting. We win early in recruiting. It's more about winning late in recruiting. If you tell me, Wholesome, you guys have the 25th recruiting class now in June, but come February of 2020, we have a top 5 recruiting class because of the W's and because we're evaluating properly of is this guy a Miami guy and can he come here and help our program, or are we just picking a guy up for numbers? So I prefer us to win recruiting later on after backed up by a 10 plus win season, 9 or 10 plus win season. If you look over the last 15 years, the 2 times we had a 9 win season, we had a top 10 recruiting class. The 1 time we had a 10 win season, we had a top 8 recruiting class. So you win, and the young men down here, it's a direct correlation. The 2 schools down here in South Florida who are having the most success is Miami Northwestern and Miami Carroll City. Why? Because they're winning, and you don't need an address to proof of address to attend high schools anymore in the state of Florida. So you can kind of go wherever you want to go. It's a whole other level of recruiting, and even at a high school level. So these schools have like 4 or 5 teams basically. You have your first stream through fourth team, and all the 4 or 5 star guys run to these local private schools because of the history and the winning. Well, if you can replicate that at the University of Miami, we'll do what Clemson was able to do and turn down a 5-star. That's when you know your program is on a whole nother level. When you say, no, we've taken enough at your position. Sorry, take camp elsewhere. That's where we want to be at the U. And you have to get those W's so that the kids down here, they want to play for a winning program.
He is the
When they
wholesome
say,
one. Yes, Dwayne Holloway, HOLSUM, the number one. HOLSUM, the number one. Join him right here on YouTube. Of course, you've joined Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please join our exclusive community that we have, the Voice of College Football community on Patreon. Please join us right there for 2 exclusive live streams that are must see with a roundtable with you, the viewer, the community, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the Voice of College Football, where we bring you on the live stream and talk to you directly, and also my reaction to your viewer comments. Wholesome one, we appreciate you stopping by.
of course, yet again, thank you all so much for having me on. And go ahead and check out my channel when you get a chance. Blessed to have another day, and you have a blessed day.